Cairo, Seattle.
This is Fight, an MMA podcast with Bob Stelton and Danny O'Neill. Insight and analysis from every angle.
You can't dispute the results.
The fights.
That was the biggest pay-per-view card in the history of the UFC.
Fighters.
We're here with Carlos Condit. He joins us.
Uriah, how you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
And everything from the world of mixed martial arts. It's time for Fight.
We join this week's Fight, an MMA podcast, mid-rant, where Bob Stelton is voicing his thoughts about Juliana Pena.
The whiny fighter thing, just gets me. And she's feeling cheated and upset that Ronda Rousey's getting the fight with Amanda Nunes. Somehow she feels entitled to that fight based on her 2 decision wins over Jessica Ai and Kat Zingano. Thus, she should be propelled. She called, I've got the article here. It's bullshit. That spoiled brat has gotten everything handed to her, and she's getting everything handed to her again. It's bullshit. You know what? Then get your ass out of the UFC. What the hell are you talking about? This woman dominated this division for 3 years and went through the top 10 like warm butter, hot knife through warm butter. She just absolutely annihilated every contender that was available, of which you were not one, sister. And for you to talk about her is like she's had everything handed to her. Yeah. Number one contender after number one contender was served up on a platter, and she kicked their ass. What the hell are you talking about? It's amazing to listen. And I understand people positioning to get themselves in the picture. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and now maybe she'll be considered. But you're coming off like a petty, entitled little brat that you're calling her when you've really achieved nothing even remotely close to what she's done. Not even in the same conversation. You're way down the food trough here, sister. You're way down the line. So you ought to just wait your turn and shut your pie hole. Seriously.
She trains in Spokane.
With Misha.
Right.
And we're used to. Misha's in Vegas.
There's a whole group there that does it. It's Fight. I'm Danny O'Neill. It's Bob Stelton.
Were we recording?
Yeah.
Oh.
You didn't want to do that?
No,
I thought that
fine.
was pretty good.
It's fine. It's what I think.
Juliana Pena.
Yeah.
She
the Venezuelan vixen.
The other women in her season on The Ultimate Fighter didn't like her.
No.
Like, that was very clear. There was tension in the house, and there were dudes in that house too, if I'm remembering correctly. And I know that there were issues there. She suffered a horrible knee injury in practice, training with a dude. And I remember Dana, a guy hurt her knee. And I remember Dana being really mad about what had happened and basically saying that he thought the training partner, the dude, had taken liberties and put her in a vulnerable position. And whether it was some sort of dominance thing or what was going on, but basically that it was a bad training. And because there's another Chiesa fights out of that gym too as well. I believe.
Chiesa, yeah. I've seen them hanging out together.
Yeah.
I saw them actually at a local jiu-jitsu tournament.
Yeah, so Chiesa, I think it's Sick Jitsu. I've been to that gym over there.
Have you?
Yeah. You know why? Fancy Pants was fighting out of there. Do you remember Fancy Pants?
Lyle Beerbaum?
Lyle Beerbaum, yeah. Yeah, that was one of my favorite leads that I've written to any story. It was in the Seattle Times that I said Lyle Beerbaum was living in a cell when he decided to make his living in a cage because he was in jail. He was a meth addict.
Jeez.
When he decided that, like, oh man, I can totally do this. He's a pretty successful fighter, mostly in the Strikeforce promotion.
Yeah, I saw him in St. Louis on a Strikeforce card, and I don't know if it was his mom. I think his mom made his shorts that he wore.
That's correct, yes.
And I think I was sitting a couple rows in front of her, and she was one of those people that just had a bullhorn of a voice that just cut through the entire arena. I had a pain in my throat listening to her. Like, that's gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt. I'm pretty sure it was somebody very close to him. Somebody had told me it was his mother. I can't verify that 100%, but boy, she's got pipes. I'll say that.
You didn't see the needle and thread she had there because she sewed his fighting shorts.
What do you think of this Pena thing here? Because I'll read the rest of her comment. She's saying she doesn't understand how Rousey, who hasn't fought in almost a year, is coming off a devastating knockout loss to Holly Holm, was able to get an immediate title shot. Her quote, "I have no idea. Never in the history have I ever heard of somebody have a no controversy, brutal knockout, then quit the sport, then come back and get a title shot right away. The girl is mentally weak, and Amanda Nunes is going to knock the bleeping knock her out and expose her ass. She's literally the worst fighter on the roster. I can't stomach the fact that I'm not getting the title shot. I don't know how they conduct business over there, but they're going to do what they want no matter what, so there's not really much I can do. Back to the drawing board, I guess. She's literally the worst fighter on the roster. If she's trying to go Conor McGregor, she's really bad at it. Mm-hmm. You've got zero ground to stand on. None. You are not worthy of a title shot. You are not worthy of Ronda Rousey even speaking your name at this point, other than to kick your ass later down the road. Maybe that's what you're setting yourself up for, is that big payday. But to act like you're on equal footing and call her the worst fighter on the roster, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Seriously. And then somebody else had told me she was threatening to quit. Good. Sit down. Have a seat next to Jose Aldo.
I love how angry you get about the different things. And, well, speaking of Jose Aldo, Dana White is a big week for Jose. Big week for him because, no, they didn't force him to make the J in his name silent. He remains Jose. Yeah. But he did get to talk to Dana White. Here's Dana White talking before they had their sit down, although I really wish that it didn't make it sound like it was some sort of mafia boss. We had a sit down. Yeah. We sorted it out in a sit down. Fine, I texted him a couple times and told him to quit whining. Here's Dana White before the meeting with Jose.
I think he's being a little ridiculous about this. I'll get him a fight. I'll get him a fight all day long. I mean, if you look at that division, it's stacked. Holloway's ready. He wants to fight. Anthony Pettis is in that division now. There's a lot of talented guys there that he can fight. I can't make Conor McGregor fight anybody. And obviously, everybody wants to fight. I'm waiting for Joanna Jędrzejczyk to call out Conor McGregor next. I mean, everybody wants to fight Conor.
He makes her name sound so easy.
Well, he is around her a lot.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk? Jędrzejczyk.
Yeah, you got it.
I still like Joanna consonants.
You can go with that. We know who you're talking about.
She had a training video this week that I saw. It was absolutely sick with her just throwing elbows.
Yeah.
She's a vicious striker.
And it's fluid and natural.
Oh.
Right?
She's a fun fighter to watch. She's kind of an idiot, too, the way she talked. I give her a pass because it's obvious that she's kind of... English is the second language, but
right.
The back and forth with her and Claudia was... Joanna came off very poorly, I thought, in that season.
She came off kind of like a bully. And
a little bit. And
I think the translation, I think that between the both of them, it was a little tough for them to really get into some good trash talk.
Right.
It was a little jagged.
But I love her as a fighter. I love the way she fights. And the big news is probably, since the last, that Rousey's going to fight. She's going to fight on New Year's Eve. You're going to get that opportunity to see her. I think there's a lot of questions, and we've got Damon Martin from Fox Sports. It'll be fun to hear his opinion about how long she's going to stick around. There's a lot of thoughts that her long-term play might not necessarily be in MMA. She might go be a movie star. There's a lot of different opportunities, but she's going to fight. She's going to fight for the title. I'm excited to see that.
You have any issues with it?
No, God, no. No, I don't at all.
She's the biggest name in this sport. Her and Conor McGregor.
Dude, she lost once.
And she dominated the division for years.
Yes.
Not one and done. Holly Holm loses the next fight to Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate loses the next fight to Amanda Nunes. Ronda was crushing everybody. It wasn't competitive. It was starting to get boring. And if there's a silver lining, it's made her much more intriguing. I believe many more eyes will be on this fight than there ever could have been had she gone through Holly Holm like she did everybody else. I think there was starting to get fans were starting to get a sense of just apathy to, is it going to last 40 seconds or a minute? Is somebody going to get out of the first round? It was almost that pre-Buster Douglas Mike Tyson where it was like, all right, who's the next tomato can but the problem was these weren't tomato cans. These were the best in the division, and she went 1, 2, 3, line them up, knock them down. There was nobody that was being avoided, and all of this nonsense that Juliana Pena is throwing out there. Again, I think there's obviously motive behind it. I'm kind of kidding about it. I understand her motive, but if she's truly threatening to go fight for Combat America, help yourself. Enjoy your anonymity.
Here's the thing, though. She's not doing it right. Here's how you do it. You say, I think it's interesting that they just handpick her. I wish I was getting that opportunity. I think that once I get the opportunity, I'll show you what a hollow champion she is and the fact that her time is done. You don't do it by sort of knocking the UFC for making what is. If she really thinks it was a dumb decision, she's the one that's dumb. The second part is, if you're trying to line up a fight for that person, you don't do it by calling her the worst fighter on the roster, because then what does a victory over her actually mean?
Right.
If your long-term goal is a fight with Ronda Rousey, which every female fighter should be, because look, that's where you're going to get the biggest payday.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it by minimizing her talents, saying that I'm new, I'm better, she's dated, she's the yesterday's news, and I'll make it clear. It's such a stupid thing.
And her saying she's now considering leaving the promotion after learning that Rousey was getting the title shot. Maybe I'll go fight for Combat America or something, because it sounds like they want to pay me serious money and actually give me a belt right off the bat, just like they did with Ronda in the UFC. They just handed Ronda a belt, and Combat will hand me a belt. So I don't know. We'll see how that. So I guess you have a problem when it's with Ronda, but you can go to another organization if they do it for you. Well, then we're all good.
Here's the thing. You're not going to make as much money doing that. And we'll get to Damon Martin here in just a second. The other part of this, though, is that one of the reasons I love, and when I've gotten a chance to report on fighting and watching fighting, is that you get unvarnished truth from fighters. Mm-hmm. You don't have the years of filtering that they've gone through and the media training that any NFL player, he's probably told his life story to 8 different reporters. There's not much that he's interested in doing. Now, the downside to it is that sometimes unvarnished idiocy comes out, and that you put a microphone in front of someone and they start, oh, I must be the smartest person here because this person's recording my every thought. And then it starts coming out and you're like, dude, shut up. You have no idea how bad this is going to look when it gets on a page. And it does look bad, and people kind of get caught up in their own. If you don't have a pretty firm sense of yourself and your relative place in the pecking order, it's very easy to come across like that when you just start ranting.
What you just said is perfect. No sense of her place in the pecking order, right? If this were Holly Holm, talking about I want a rematch, or if this were Cyborg, I can listen to the trash talk and them, ripping on Ronda or something. They've got ground to stand on. They've done Holly beat her. Cyborg looks like the most unbeatable female we've ever seen. So I give her, and she's cut through everybody they've ever put in front of her in any organization she's fought in. Achieve something first. Then run your mouth. Then threaten to leave like somehow it's going to be damaging to the current promotion you're a part of. Because I can tell you what, the UFC will be just fine if you're fighting in another organization. It's not going to make a dent in anything they're doing or promoting. So let's get a better sense of the pecking order here. That's perfect.
It's time for us to get in the cage. Damon Martin from Fox Sports joining us next.
Hello?
Damon.
Yes.
It's Bob Stelton. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Bob. How are you?
I'm great. I'm here with Danny O'Neill. He's going to be with us. If you're ready to roll, we'll start taping.
I am ready.
It's Fight, an MMA podcast. I'm Danny O'Neill with Bob Stelton. We're joined now by Damon Martin. You can follow him on Twitter at Damon Martin, and he covers the UFC. And an opportunity to talk to him, contributor for Fox Sports as well as UFC.com. Damon, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Well, you just missed an epic rant by Bob Stelton, who is less than enthused by Juliana Peña's threats to leave the UFC because she believes that Ronda Rousey is ducking her. She's a local fighter out here. She's from Eastern Washington. I don't even know if she makes a blip on the national radar. Have you heard of this person before, David?
Juliana Peña is a phenomenal fighter, and she has a right to be a little upset that she's getting passed over for a title shot when legitimately she's probably the next person in line most deserving. But this is a quote I've said in dozens of interviews since Ronda Rousey was named as the number one contender, and Conor McGregor is fighting for the lightweight title without a zero-fight at lightweight. People in the MMA atmosphere need to strike the word deserves from your vocabulary. Just get rid of it. Pretend it doesn't exist, because in this sport, yes, in a perfect world, the person on a multi-fight win streak or the person ranked number one in the division would always get the title shot. But listen, this is a sport about entertainment. This is a sport about making money. And you're telling me that Major League Baseball wouldn't wouldn't do anything in their power to have a Cubs-Yankees World Series if they could, just because of the media market and the attention. Obviously, they can't control that. But you're telling me if they didn't have that control, they wouldn't try to make that kind of a matchup? That's exactly what the UFC is doing. They have that control, and they know Ronda Rousey is going to bring in probably 1 million pay-per-view buys Juliana Pena against Amanda Nunes, and I like both of those fighters very much. That's a co-main event, or if it headlines the show, it's going to do 200 or 300,000 pay-per-view buys maximum versus 1 million or more with Ronda Rousey.
I agree when Dana says it'll be, when Rousey fights, it's always amongst the top. And if she fights Cyborg, it'll be the biggest pay-per-view they've ever had. I've got no doubts. My issue with Juliana Pena is she's got 2 decision wins in my mind that were, okay, you beat Kat Zingano, who's good. We saw what Ronda Rousey did to her. You beat Jessica Ai in a decision. You decision these 2 girls. That's the extent of your achievement in terms of top-notch opponents. For her to come out and say she's literally talking about Ronda Rousey, she's literally the worst fighter on the roster. I can't stomach the fact that I'm not getting a title shot. I don't know how they conduct business. I get that on some level she's trying to talk her way, position herself into a title shot, but then to threaten to go fight for Combat America, and as if that's a big threat to Dana White in the UFC. Let's be honest about her status. She is anonymous to anybody outside of the hardcores. Nobody knows who Juliana Pena is outside of people like you and me and Danny and the hardcores of the sport, whereas Ronda Rousey transcends the sport. To talk about yourself like you're somehow on the same level, that you should be getting the same consideration, I find comical at best.
Yeah, I mean, listen, everyone, when you get in this sport and you see people like Conor McGregor learn how to play the game, and what I mean by that is they play both sides of the fence. They're phenomenal fighters, but he's also a phenomenal talker. From the day he showed up in the UFC at his first post-fight press conference, he was, making headline-worthy quotes, and he was on the prelims of a card, if I'm not mistaken, it was in Sweden. So obviously not a card that was probably going to get as much of attention. But that's what Conor did. He made people pay attention to him. And so other fighters are trying to do the same thing. They're following suit in a lot of ways. And I think that's what Juliana's doing. She's trying to bring attention to herself so people will pay attention to what she's saying and what she's doing. But, you're not wrong in talking in terms of her accomplishments. Yes, the win over Kat Zingano was impressive, but, it wasn't the kind of finish that's going to make you go out and call your friends and say, wow, you had to see this fight. What an incredible performance. You could say the same thing about the Jessica Ai fight. Yes, it was a win, and she definitely won. But at no point were you calling your friends and say, "Man, did you see that performance? Look at that! I mean, this girl's going to be a superstar." And those are the kind of memory-making performances you need. Amanda Nunes had those kind of performances. I mean, yes, she had a close fight, a battle with Valentina Shevchenko, but go back and watch her fight with Sarah McMahon when she went out there and just obliterated a silver medalist in 2 minutes. Went out there and obliterated, some other fighters. And, when you have those kind of impressions in your mind, it's easier to sell people on a title fight. It's easier to sell people why they deserve to be in a title fight. And ultimately, the talk is great, but you still have to make the biggest impact in the octagon. And while Juliana absolutely has a case as she's on the biggest win streak right now, she just hasn't made that kind of dynamic impact that people are going to say, wow, I really want to see her fight for the title. And ultimately, that's what's going to control this. That's what's going to get people enthusiastic to see you in a title fight when you go out there and really put a stamp on your performances.
We'll get to UFC 205 in just a second. We're a couple weeks out from what looks to me to be the biggest card the UFC has ever put on. Knock on wood that everybody stays healthy. Damon, what do you expect from Ronda Rousey? I'm seeing it as sort of the second chapter in her UFC career. She's coming back from a loss. She'll fight on New Year's Eve. She's taken on Amanda Nunes, who absolutely destroyed Miesha Tate. And look, she looked like she was a pinpoint striker in that fight. What are you expecting from Ronda this time around?
I think Ronda's going to come back with a lot of fire. I mean, she has a lot of determination, and I think she wants to get back to where she was. Obviously, you have to wonder about her mental preparation because, some fighters never recover from a tough loss. When you get knocked out the first time, some people just never come back from that. Whether it's, just that trepidation when you step into the octagon, you don't want to get hit, or some people get cracked good that one time and they can just never take a punch again. I've seen both cases happen. So I think there's going to be a lot of questions about Ronda. I mean, I think in her head and in her preparation, she's going to come back and, be the same fiery Ronda Rousey we're used to seeing. But she's running into a bull this time. Amanda Nunes is an extremely good fighter. Even before Ronda Rousey lost to Holly Holm, I had said that I thought Amanda Nunes could have been the toughest matchup for Ronda Rousey because what Ronda Rousey typically does is she comes in early and kind of overwhelms her opponent. That's how she has so many 15, 30, 45-second victories as she comes out and she's just kind of bull rushes her opponent and dominates them in that first minute, and they never recover. Amanda Nunes is built the same way. Amanda Nunes comes charging out of the gate, and she is a very fast starter. Look what she did to Miesha Tate, as I mentioned, that fight with Sarah McMahon. So stylistically, this is kind of a bad matchup for Ronda. So if Ronda's going to come back, this is, honestly, the probably the absolute worst possible matchup to see where she's at, because Amanda Nunes is going to match her, early in the fight. Now, she can still go out there and get an early finish, and she'll silence a lot of doubters, but this is not an easy fight. This is not a walkthrough. This is not a let's hand Ronda back the title by any means.
Do you think she can achieve what she needs to on her feet with Edmund as her coach? And I know he's received a lot of criticism, and after the last fight, I got to be honest, Damon, he deserves it. I thought that couldn't have been worse if there was a game plan. I'm not entirely sure what it was by watching what was going on there. He didn't seem to have any of the proper instructions or any instructions that would have helped her in the corner, and I know she was dazed, but man, that was just an awful display by a corner man. And as far as a game plan, I'm not sure exactly what was the thought was going into that fight with Holly Holm. But to me, the questions are legitimate. Can she get to the level of striking she needs to in order to beat somebody like Amanda Nunes? And then if she does get past her, fight somebody like Cyborg?
Yeah. I mean, listen, Edmund may be a great boxing coach. I'm not a big believer in Edmund Tarverdian, never really have been. I think Ronda Rousey kind of made him because Ronda Rousey is so unbelievably talented that, he kind of rode her coattails, into stardom because people knew him as Ronda's coach. But I think Ronda was just so ultra talented that she would have gotten that way with anybody. I could have been her coach, and she would have probably been as good as she is because that's just how talented Ronda Rousey is. Listen, Edmund may be a phenomenal boxing coach. I've talked to fighters. Ronda's boyfriend and UFC heavyweight Travis Brown has told me numerous times how much he's learned from Edmund. But being a coach in the gym and being a coach on fight night are two different things. There are phenomenal coaches out there who are striking coaches, but you'll see them in the corner, but they're not typically the ones in charge giving advice and handling things between rounds and things like that. Watch the difference. And you can go back when you watch any of the UFC shows, they actually have a corner cam you can get if you buy the UFC pay-per-views on their website, where you can actually listen to every single thing the corners say. And if you listen to a guy like Greg Jackson, who in my opinion is probably the best, one of the best coaches in the sport, the way he talks to his fighters between rounds is calming and educated and very cerebral. He's very to the point of what he wants to get in that 1 minute he has. He'll be honest. He'll tell them if they're down 2-0, if they need to go out and get a finish, if they look good, if they look bad, the things they did right, the things they did wrong. And you look at Edmund, and I was in the corner when Travis Brown fought Fabricio Verdum in Cleveland. I was right behind them, and I was listening to some of the things this guy was saying, and I was just like, what is he doing? Like, what is he doing to help Travis come out and be better in that second round? So, maybe Edmund is a phenomenal gym coach. There are a lot of great gym coaches out there, but maybe what Ronda needs is to have him, work with her boxing if he is that good, and I'm not even sold that he's that good in that realm, and then maybe bring in a head coach to actually handle the game plan, to handle the strategy, and to handle her between rounds if it gets that far.
Damon, do you think he's riding the coattails of being part of the Targaryen family?
Oh.
He could be. That is true. He may be the 21st century version of that. That's true.
Yeah, he's the tamer of dragons. He tamed the dragon that is. Bob's shaking his head at me.
You just couldn't help yourself.
Bob's really disappointed in me.
He just couldn't help himself.
See,
Damon.
but Damon knows what's up. He knows a little Game of Thrones.
I know it too, but you just
nerdcore movement.
You and your puns. He can't help himself, Damon. It's who Danny is.
I love it. I love it.
Damon, the big news this week, and I'll admit this caught me off guard. I didn't expect the first move under the first significant change or move under new ownership of the UFC to be layoffs. But there's reports of that as much as 15% of the staff, including some long-term employees, let go. I feel really bad for the people that lost their jobs. I don't know what all went into it. You certainly know that a new ownership is going to take a look at how things are done and see where they can maybe improve profits. But I was really shocked that a business that has grown to be as successful as the UFC has, grown to be something they bought for $4 billion, that the first move is to sort of thin the ranks of the guys that manage it.
Well, this is not unusual in these kind of corporate buyout situations when people, buy an organization, they come in and kind of bring in their own people. And that goes across the board, whether you're talking about somebody buying an NFL team or somebody buying an organization like the UFC. When WME, William Morris Endeavor, bought IMG back in 2014, the other half of their business, IMG, properties, they let go right away with I think it was 350 employees. There were about 3,500 employees at the time, and they let go of about 350. A lot of it is redundancy. They have a big production department at WME in LA. They don't necessarily need a second production department at the UFC. As far as like some of the international heads and things like this, I think that just goes back to control. They're trying to bring back control into the WWE. They want things done the WME way. And obviously some of these international offices in, let's say, England, where there's one show or maybe two shows a year, I'm guessing that was kind of the justification that, they didn't need to be paying X amount of dollars for somebody that was technically working for two shows a year. Again, I'm just guessing as far as why they were trying to justify these moves. It's sad because so many of these people have worked to build and make the UFC what it is today. They helped make the UFC worth $4 billion. But I also understand the corporate structure of this, that nobody should really be surprised, because when you spend $4 billion on a property, you want to make sure it's out there in the way you want it out there, and you also want to make sure your people are in charge. I always remember a famous line from a movie where in the movie Casino, when Robert De Niro tells somebody there's three ways to do things: the right way, the wrong way, and the way I do it. And that's kind of what I think of this situation. WME wants them to do it the way they do it, and they do have a lot of people involved at their business, working with celebrities, working with rock stars, working with, all these different properties in Los Angeles and New York. And so they're just trying to thin the payroll. I don't necessarily agree with some of the moves. I think there's some great employees that lost their jobs that I really didn't agree with. But listen, I'm not the one who paid $4 billion for the UFC either.
Yeah, I was ready to blame Cam Newton and Conan O'Brien and all the new owners, coming in and just running roughshod over everybody.
Well, see, here's what I was hoping Bisping was one of the people that got laid off. That's what I was rooting for.
See, there's another thing you'll learn about Danny, Damon, is he is not a Michael Bisping fan on any level whatsoever. So,
and I will tell you this. I'll tell you a couple things about Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, when he's off the air, one of the nicest, absolute nicest guys you'll ever be around. And he's actually a massive Game of Thrones fan. When I see him, anytime I see him in an event, he'll stop me. I was actually backstage at a UFC Tonight filming in Vegas. I can't remember what event it was, a couple of events ago. And I walked in the room, and I said hello to everybody, and Bisping walks right up to me. Doesn't ask me a single question about the UFC immediately. He's just like, okay, tell me what's going on in Game of Thrones. So that's just how he is. He's a huge Game of Thrones fan. But Mike is actually a really, really good dude. Of course, he's very outspoken in the press, but he's actually a really, really great guy.
I've tried to tell Danny that because I've talked to Mike quite a few times, but he's not listening.
I am unflinching in it, and I do think it makes sense that he's a Game of Thrones fan because he kind of looks like Varys, who's the eunuch on the show.
Oh boy. I'm not sure how I transitioned from that one, Damon.
Go ahead. Good luck, Bob.
Let's talk Jose Aldo, who just had his meeting with Dana White, another fighter who's upset about what he didn't get. Now, at least this guy's got ground to stand on as compared to Juliana Pena. He was a long-time champion who was fighting everybody, beating everybody, so at least he's got some ground to stand on. I didn't love the way he sort of whined after his loss, like somehow he was cheated. I mean, you got knocked out in 13 seconds. You didn't get cheated. You got tuned up. But I think he's got some level of merit to his complaint, yet seems like he wants to carry this whole thing out and saying even after his meeting, yeah, it was a great meeting, I don't have any intentions of fighting. He wants to have the option to go box, to go kickbox, to go enter jiu-jitsu tournaments. Says he doesn't want to have to check in with the UFC every time he does that. They're talking about an addendum to his contract, but he doesn't sound, him and his reps sound like they're pretty steadfast, and maybe it's a positioning thing, but steadfast in the fact that he's not really wanting to fight right now.
I think eventually Jose Aldo will fight, and I think he will fight in the UFC. I mean, listen, he has a leg to stand on, and here's the thing, and I had this conversation with Frankie Edgar last week. You could be sympathetic to what Jose Aldo is talking about. I mean, he was told that if he went out and won at UFC 200, he would get the interim title, and Conor McGregor would be next, or Conor McGregor would be giving up the featherweight title, so at least he would have the real championship. I understand his frustration, and I sympathize with Jose Aldo in this situation. Yes, You got knocked out in 13 seconds. I was never a big believer in him getting an immediate rematch because of that. But he went out and he is the only featherweight champion the UFC had ever known up to that point. So he had valid arguments. I don't think anyone's going to say that Jose didn't have a leg to stand on, especially considering his status in the sport. But ultimately, saying you're going to retire, saying you're going to leave, saying you want your release. I mean, listen, you're not going to get your release. I think he said he had like 5 or 6 fights left on his contract. There's no way he's getting his release. We all knew that from the very beginning. As far as retirement goes, I mean, that's always a possibility. I mean, guys have retired younger than Jose Aldo, so not to say I didn't believe him. But I think, listen, the guy was angry. He was frustrated. He didn't get what was promised to him. And trust me, he's not the first guy that the UFC has promised something to, and they didn't come through and deliver. So I understand. Like I said, I actually sympathize with Jose Aldo, as you said, as opposed to somebody like Juliana Pena. Jose Aldo has put in his work. He has been the only featherweight champion the UFC has ever known. So I understand his frustration, but at the same time, Conor McGregor is a special case. He's the biggest superstar in the sport. He brings in more money than anybody else in the sport. He wanted to go for a second title, and I don't think Conor McGregor is ever going to featherweight again anyways. But I understand where Jose Aldo is coming from, but I think ultimately this first meeting was just a start of the conversation. I think there'll be a couple more, and then we're going to see Jose Aldo get booked for a fight. My guess would be early next year at some point. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be against Conor McGregor. I think he's going to end up fighting a Max Holloway or maybe an Anthony Pettis, January, February, March. But I think we will see him back in there. He's just frustrated, and I get it.
Hey, 2 last things for you really quickly, Damon, before we let you go. First of all, just back to Rousey for a minute. Let's assume she beats Nunez, and then Dana's talked about, yes, she's going to fight Cyborg. I'm sure you watched that little documentary of Cyborg cutting weight to 140 and watching her laying on a hotel room floor crying, and they're trying to get her to lose more weight. I mean, watching her cut to 140 was painful, and she didn't even really make it. If you looked at the scale, it was 141.3 or 5, whatever it was. The idea of her cutting down to 135, I used to think she could do it if she wanted to. I no longer believe that. So let's assume Ronda wins. Is that fight going to happen at 140? Do you see Ronda sort of giving in and saying, fine, I'll move up to 140 to fight her? Because I don't think Cyborg could make 35.
Yeah, Cyborg's not making 135 without losing a limb. It's just not going to happen. People need to get that out of their heads. I think the fight will eventually happen, but I don't think it's going to happen next. I think if Ronda comes back and she does get past Amanda Nunes, I think she's got a couple of other fights that she could have first. Not because, the big key here is I don't think it's because she's ducking Cyborg necessarily. I think the way that this could play out is that Ronda wants to make the Cyborg fight as big as it would have been, had she beaten Holly Holm. If she had beaten Holly Holm last year and kind of vanquished every contender that was in front of her at that point, you could say, well, the Cyborg fight is really all she has left. There really wasn't a number one contender outside of that, at that moment, besides Miesha Tate, who she had already beaten twice at that time. Now, Ronda's off a loss. People are questioning Ronda. People aren't as high on Ronda in terms of her, invincibility. So she needs to kind of, come back, in my opinion, and kind of regain that sense of invincibility. She needs to beat Amanda Nunes. I think if Holly Holm can come back and pick up a win or two, I think they've got to do that rematch with Holly Holm to allow Ronda the chance to, to avenge her loss to her. And I think that will probably be a precedent in front of Cyborg. And then if she can vanquish Holly Holm, she can vanquish Amanda Nunes, and maybe you throw in one more title defense against a Juliana Pena, or if some other contender kind of rises up through the ranks like a Valentina Shevchenko, who has looked phenomenal lately. Maybe she racks up 2 or 3 wins in a row, and then you put on the Cyborg fight. But it's not because we're missing out on an opportunity or because I understand Cyborg's, frustration. She wants this fight. It's a big fight. It's a huge fight, and it would pay her a lot of money. But to make it as big as it could be, I think you need to give Ronda a little bit back of that invincibility that she had before. Because I think right now, if you match up Ronda with Cyborg is going to be a massive favorite, in my opinion. She's going to be hugely favored to win that fight. But if you allow Ronda to go out there and kind of regain what she had before, she beats Amanda, she beats Holly, she beats another contender, she looks incredible again, think about how much bigger that fight would be, and that's how I think it plays out.
Last thing before we let you go, nerdcoremovement.com. For the people listening that aren't aware of what that is, tell them what it is.
It's my own personal website, very much a labor of love. I'm a huge TV, movie, comic book guy, and I just love writing about it. So, I cover a lot of TV shows. American Horror Story was on last night, The Flash, shows like that. I cover a lot of movies, of course, movie reviews. The Walking Dead comes back this weekend. I do a ton of Walking Dead coverage. I just dropped a Walking Dead preview. It's just a lot of, kind of nerd pop culture stuff, and it's just very much, my passion outside of MMA, and I love writing about it. So figure why not start a website? And so that's my website.
He is Damon Martin. You can follow him on Twitter. We're really grateful he spent the time here. Contributor at foxsports.com as well as UFC2UFC.com. Damon, thanks so much. It's fun for me to get a chance to know you. I know you've been a great friend to Bob.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right.
Hey, Damon, thanks a lot, man. Always appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks.
Absolutely. We'll do it again, buddy.
All right. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
And we'll be back to wrap up this edition of Fight next.
Choking on the smoke from the fire you started. Choking on the ash from the bridges you
Says, you boys know when you all retire, you'll just be known as one of my contenders. Easy for y'all to talk that. And then something's blacked out. When daddy ain't home.
What's John Jones' status right now?
His date got pushed back. His meeting with the Nevada State Athletic Commission got pushed back, and I can't remember if it was on his team's request or their. So I don't know. For a while there, he was sort of teasing on Instagram, like,
right.
Hey, good news is coming. I could be back in the cage soon. And Dana
said something. He said that there was basically good news, and then it was reports of boner pills, right?
Yeah. Well, that was it. And so I don't know where things stand, to be honest. I have no idea what he was or wasn't doing or what the Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to do. They seem pretty arbitrary. They don't seem to have any level of consistency in anything they do. We just saw what happened with Conor and all of that, and you still have the Brock Lesnar hearing to come.
Oh yeah,
and Jones, and so we'll see. We saw what they did with Diaz. I mean, they're kind of all over the map with how they handle their business.
They do have one consistent strain. They don't like Nick Diaz.
Well, I can't necessarily say that I blame him. As much as I've sort of warmed to the Diaz persona, I don't embrace it like you do. I understand if I'm in a position of authority and I've got this guy across from me for the third time and acting completely indignant, and yeah, I get it. I sort of get what their issues would be with them.
See, now here's what I wish would happen. I wish that they would just say, okay, man, you're going to smoke weed, and we're going to fine you every time it happens, but we're not going to keep you from fighting. And instead, they banned him. It was like for a year and a half.
Well, it was 5 years.
And then it went down to a year and a half. That's insane.
It is insane. But it wasn't like it was first offense and we just put the hammer down. I mean, he basically egged them on, and then his brother kind of egged him on after his last fight with Conor, sat there on the post-fight presser smoking the vape pen of CBD oil. And telling everybody, yeah, you can get this at blah, blah, blah. It's CBD oil, good for pain. And they basically warned him. They gave him a pass. I was surprised. I thought for sure they were going to just lay into him. Nothing really happened. It was a warning for him basically just flaunting it.
If you got different standards for people, though, right? Like we try to.
Yeah, I need perfect people around me at all times.
No, like grade on a curve. I'm saying. I'm saying if somebody shows an inability to learn, don't we like be a little more relaxed with them? Like maybe we should kind of just understand.
Is it inability or unwillingness?
I don't know. We might be splitting hairs. It might be tomato with those two. It is fight. That was fun to talk to Damon Martin.
He's great. He knows his stuff. He's dialed in every event, and he's really, really got a good approach to the sport. I think he writes really, really well, and I just love talking about the sport with him. We've
got about 3 weeks to go before, I guess 3.5 weeks now before UFC 205, which is going to be a 4-hour pay-per-view card. I read that they expanded the window because the card is so stacked.
It's unreal. And every fight fan that's ever anticipated any card, your biggest fear is somebody gets hurt. It seems to happen with every card. Somebody pulls out. It happened with UFC 200. You had obviously Jones, and that whole thing went by the wayside. So cards change. So we can look at it now where I've never felt more fingers crossed than there is right now for this card. That everybody just stay healthy, because it is top to bottom the greatest card they've ever put on, I think.
Now, so it's November 12th.
Right.
And that's the weekend the Seahawks are playing at New England, and I travel to the road games. Now, originally, I was going to try to take a red eye out on Saturday night so I could go to the UW-USC game, which is also that day. But that's a whole different, because we don't even know what time that game is. It might be played late. I might not be able to make my red eye. So I have a Saturday morning flight. I'll get into Boston, and now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, maybe I want to take the Friday red eye, drive down from Boston to New York, the 4 hours there, so I can go see the first card in New York City, MSG. The world's greatest arena.
You think you can get in?
I don't know.
I was reading about regular press guys that were there very often not getting in because there were so many requests.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you don't think that if I said, hey, I'm Danny O'Neill.
I think if you stood outside
710 ESPN Seattle.
Pound on the door shouting.
I do this podcast called Fight.
I don't see that happening, but I wish you luck, and I would admire the attempt.
Yeah. Either that or maybe I could get one of these guys to bring me in as a second.
Yeah, you could be the corner man. You could do as good a job as Edmund.
Edmund Targaryen.
Him too.
What was your reaction? Do you get embarrassed by me sometimes?
No, you make me laugh.
You
make me laugh, but sometimes it's like, yeah, he just couldn't. He couldn't resist. It's just in you. You're compelled.
You can see it.
I see you winding up.
Yeah, people can say that they'll see it when I come up with something that
because you start looking off a little bit. You're not making eye contact with me, and all of a sudden a grin starts to form, and I can just see the wheels turning. Like, I got a good pun coming.
Yeah.
Here it comes. As soon as he stops talking, I'm gonna lay it on him. Here it comes. Get ready.
It's very strange because the worse I know it is, the more excited I am to say it.
I think you don't want people to laugh. I think you want people to sort of go,
oh, that's by far the best reaction.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to. Like when people legitimately laugh, I'm like, that's not nearly as fun as making them squirm.
It's a weird part of your personality,
and
man.
You could hear him. And Damon, look, he was a pretty good sport about this, but he's trying to, and I've been in the same situation where somebody will start talking to me about Richard Sherman, and I'll be like, look, he's a really good dude. Like, he is one of the nicest guys that I've ever covered. Really, really respectful person. And I mean that.
So you get his attachment to Bisping.
Yes, absolutely.
Speaking to somebody who doesn't like him on any level whatsoever.
Correct. And I can only imagine what his reaction is. Okay, then this yokel who talks on the radio, because he has no idea about that side. That I totally get that Michael Bisping is actually a very accomplished fighter. And he is, for all the reasons I dislike his style, and I do dislike it, that he's incredibly effective, and he's not a bad guy, and he's made a great living for himself, and he's one of the world's best fighters, and he's been really important to it. And I still accept and understand all of that and unflinchingly hate him. Like, really dislike it.
So are we ever going to be able to have him as a guest? Because my fear is, and I've had him on as a guest, I don't know, probably 6-7 times as an analyst. He works for Fox, so we'd get him through Fox and things like that. And every time he's been great. I love talking to the guy. But my fear is that if we bring him on with you here, it'll be the last time we speak to him because you're going to probably piss him off. I don't think you can help yourself. I don't trust you, Danny, is what I'm saying. Let me just get down to the nitty-gritty. I don't trust you not to blow it up and insult him and piss him off.
No, I think we could do it. I think we could do it. That'll be one of the things that'll be on our docket. If it's still fishing for Chael Sonnen, we've still got the line cast out for that, and now we'll add Michael Bisping to the list. Try to get him on here.
I think we can get. I just haven't attempted because of that.
Are you serious?
Yes. We're laughing, but I'm not kidding.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. I need assurances from you.
Okay.
Before I pursue that.
Okay, we'll come up with a behavior contract.
We're going to write out your questions. Aaron, you're going to turn his mic off after every question so he can't jump in with an insult or something to upset Michael. We're going to have to come up with a game plan prior to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a lot of fun today.
Yeah.
We're really enjoying doing the podcast. If you guys are enjoying it, seriously, we are trying to spread the word because we think it's a great product.
We have a Twitter page too. We always forget. I forget to tell people about it. At Fight, right? At Fight and MMA Podcast.
At Fight MMA Podcast.
MMA Podcast. Okay.
So at Fight MMA Podcast, you can get us on iTunes. Please leave reviews. Seriously, that's the best thing you can do. If you like this, because we want to keep doing it. If you like this, leave a review because we are going to be trying to promote it and try to spread the word. We would like it to grow. We have some interview requests coming up. Rashad Evans is one of the guys that we're going to talk to in advance of UFC 205, which is great because of his perspective on the sport. Misha Tate is also going to come on. She's part of that card as well. Although maybe now we have to worry about if she hears about what you said about Juliana Pena.
I'll tell her what I said. Yeah. I won't be rude. I will explain. Here's why I think the way I think. You tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay. Well,
is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. It's been really fun. We thank you for listening. For Bob Stelton, I'm Danny O'Neill. Thanks for listening to Fight, an MMA podcast.
What's the name of your website again? Nerdcore?
My nerdcoremovement.com.
Nerdcoremovement.com. Okay, we'll give that a plug at the end.
So are you mad at Trebek?
Oh, thank you.
Are you mad at Trebek then, Damon?
What happened?
Not really, because the funny thing is I don't really listen to nerdcore rap, so it's a different thing. But
I know.
In a way, he's trying to be funny, but he's not funny. That's all right.
I totally missed that reference.
There was on Jeopardy. Trebek was talking to one of the contestants, and she was talking about nerdcore rap. And then he said, well, who are the kind of people that are into this? And then she said, oh, it's a lot of fun, something else different. It goes,
losers, in other words.
Well, I think... Sure.
I'm teasing you.
Oh.
I am a fellow nerd. I'm wearing a tie right now, Damon. So don't. I'm known to wear bow ties. So don't think that I think I'm a cool guy at all.
I am a proud nerd. Don't worry about it.